Greetings, programs. I am Sark. Welcome to the grid. Today's game is a bishop. I'm going to open the material editor. M key. I'm going to switch out my blueprint. $1200 by 630. I think as long as I stick roughly to my scale. Unfreeze my frame. $1230 by 600. 1200 by 630. So 63 and 120. And I think I want it to be about double that size. Just eyeball it. Actually double it. Just right clicking on my scale tool. Still small. 200 again. That's too big. I don't know why it just... We're just going to take our pawn, power it up. Pawn's pivot is off center, so no big deal. And I'm just going to scale this so that the base is approximate. Should probably be a little bigger than the pawn, but maybe not that much bigger. Feels more right. We'll say that's... Let's look at the rook. That out. Yeah, I mean... Rook should be the biggest, so... That feels okay. Just Alt-X. Move the pawn off, actually, for now. That seems odd. That's the scale we're going to go for. It's pretty close to flush. So we'll say that's good. And I'm going to right click and freeze this. Now, it's important when you're freezing blueprints that you have show frozen in gray unchecked. That lets you see it with the material on it. Okay, and this little button here allows you to see material in the viewport. If you can't see your material in the viewport with this button on, it's probably a driver issue. And that's... you've got serious problems, if that's the case. So anyway, as long as you have this little show shaded button on at the top level of the material, you should be able to see it in your viewport. It may not be like super high res, you might get a little jaggedness along the edges, and that's okay for now. Remember, it's just a proportional reference. It doesn't have to be a finished image. Yeah. So I ought to just hide these. It's just going to distract me. Okay. Get our lines. Hold the shift key for a nice flat line on the bottom. Let go of the shift key. I'm just going to rough this in. I'm going to come back later to adjust the curves. So, not clicking and dragging, I'm just clicking for the corner. I have the initial drag type. The initial type is a corner. The drag type is Bezier, so I don't really want Beziers right now. I'll use them later as needed. Probably end up needing a couple more points in there later, but that's okay too. And maybe one here, one here. Well, that's a question. Do I? No, I don't. Probably I'll end up getting rid of that. Okay. So you're going to trace your bishop. You're going to ignore slot, and you're going to just worry about it in terms of revolving it. We're lathing it first, and then we're going to cut that hole out later. Okay. I'm going to fix this up a little bit. Probably this wants to be a Bezier. Not as bubbly a curve, right? It's a little bit more of a stately shape. Chess pieces are basically furniture. Useful furniture. Okay. Do I? Yeah, that's a pretty good trick. Again, if I just smooth it, I'm going to get kind of a bubbly shape, and what's nice about the Bezier is that this is actually a curve here. Very shallow little. You can have a tighter corner, or you can have a tighter bend and still have it be smooth, right? That's one of the advantages there. And really all this, I was thinking that these were going to be like really sharp angles, but they're not. Soften that. Okay, that's a smooth. This can be a true corner. Maybe a Bezier corner just so that I can put it down, but that can be nice and sharp. May end up refining this just for the precision. What's going on here? A little rough, so I'm going to leave this as it. Is it too much? Might be exaggerated a little. Okay. Yeah, this feels a little too rough. It's gonna kind of look low poly there, so I'm just gonna plunk in a refinement. Then you could see that the line smooths out a bit. We're not going to be turbo smoothing this, so I probably want to take a little extra time and make sure that some of these details are as clean as they can be. It's probably okay. Same time, you don't want to fuss too long over very small things. Chess piece in your scene is probably not going to be very large, unless you're doing like the old trope, the giant, you know, Minotaur maze, wizard chess set. Then you might want to put some more time into it. Almost want another refinement here. Yeah. And a pair of Bezier corners, actually. It's probably a simpler way to do that, but again, I want to make sure that I don't have any corners that are like 90 degrees. That's probably a little too sharp for anywhere on a chess piece. Everything's got a little bit of a taper to it. That works out pretty smoothly. Make sure the flow is nice, that there's not some like disruption, something that's bulging out or coming in. Come up here to the top. Again, there's this tiny little curve. I think I'm just going to handle it with a single Bezier corner. I think I'm okay with that. Smooth this. Of course it wants. Want to be the same as anything else? B2. Okay. Set the X to 0 at the bottom. Grab the top vertex, set the X to 0. It's important you do this before you apply your lathe. That's not super important, but it'll save you some headaches. When you apply your lathe, it goes to the object center. So actually right now my what is this? My pivot point is not centered on the center of the bishop, and you'll see that my lathe applies there. But when you hit min, it will go to the furthest point, in this case on the left side. And if those points at the top and bottom are perfectly aligned above and below one another, then you won't have any touching up to do. You just press min, and like magic, it's exactly the shape you drew. You got this tiny little issue at the top. You press weld core. That's just the vertices at the top not having been welded. But they're all right on top of each other, so they weld nicely, and then everything's really clean. The same goes for the bottom. We're going to do at least 32 sides. Yeah, looks a lot better. So before we cut it in, let's just compare it to our bishop and our rook. Our pawn and our rook, I should say. Those are different gray. They're a different gray. Which gray are you? I like this one. Yeah, I think that looks alright. Looks like it might even belong. Compare with the pawn real quick. The pawn might gargantua pawn. No, I guess it's okay. I might have been a little less precise with the pawn's design. So that's okay. So there's a lot of ways to cut this in here, and I'm just going to go for one of the easier ways. Because we're not going to turbo smooth this, we put enough detail into our lathe. We've got 32 segments. We're not going to have to worry about subdivision deformations. So that means we can cheat and use end guns just cut this out with Boolean logic. Boolean logic is programmer speak for a Venn diagram, right? So it's not, it might be a strange word that you haven't heard before, but there's nothing like too difficult about understanding it. You don't have to be some kind of math genius to know what Boolean logic is. It's literally, you're saying these things, but not those things. So we're going to cut one thing out of another. You know what? I'll hide you. Hide selection. Yeah, look at those jaggies. Doesn't matter though. I noticed that it has this little like, I don't know, top lip. And I think I want to include that in the design. I don't know if that was intended to be there or if it's an artifact from the image or something. But I think it'll look pretty interesting. I think I've seen a bishop like that before, so I'll show you what I mean once I cut this out. Put 2 there to make that easy to smooth off. Zoom in here. And then we're just gonna, I'm gonna hold my shift key so I get a straight line and cut up that way. And then nothing else really matters, so. Okay. This and just make it wide enough that it's gonna slice right through. Gonna apply an extrude modifier. Set it to 40, that's more than wide enough. Should we put some segments in it? Maybe we should. Just to make it like a little cleaner of a mesh. Probably something like that. Whichever of those gets sliced in will be. Pivot points, center that. Back. Make sure you turn effect pivot off. Unhide your bishop. Select your bishop. Hit Alt X. Right, to turn off the transparency. And since we centered our pivot point, should just be the y-axis. That'll be nice and centered. And you could see that our mesh resolution is not comparable. we could have added a lot more segments, but I think this'll be enough. Again, because we're not going to be doing any deformation on it. If we were, we'd have to figure out how to tie each one of these off. Get that today. This is supposed to be a short lesson. Booleans are not a modifier, right? There might be. I wonder if there's a modifier version. That would be a little pro optimizer. You have to go to compound objects, and it's kind of one of the jankier things in 3ds Max because it's using some really primitive sort of programming logic that I just explained. Like it's just saying, take this, take part A, and cut it from part B. And you can actually flip them, right? So, I wonder if it's. So you could even like rearrange I'm not going to bother because it worked the way I want it. But you could pick them in the reverse order. That would do it too. So, here we are. Yeah, my mesh does not look great. Those lines didn't even quite get cut in. Probably the Pro Boolean decided not to cut them in. Oh, because it's expecting me. Yeah, so Pro Boolean is usually the one you want to use anyway, because it's the one that will let you sort of have a cleaner mesh afterwards, and you could go in and cut these through on your own afterwards. That's the expectation. So again, because we're not going to be doing any more sort of modification of the geometry, pretty happy with it as is. Don't have to. We can, and it renders just fine. It's a little sharp on these corners, but looks pretty good. Certainly looks good from any distance. It's going to stop mattering. You probably can't tell whether or not the tips of my rook have been chamfered or not at this distance. So unless this looks a heck of a lot smoother to you than that, there's no reason for any additional work there. So there's a bishop. All right, kids. Good luck. Have fun.